The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Trenching Safety Overview webinar. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation today, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have. Looking at the handouts section of the GoToWebinar panel, please note also that a PDF copy of today's presentation is available for reference. With that, we will go ahead and turn things over to Ramona, David, and Raymond. Hello.
Morning.
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 Good morning.
And Ramona, I think you're the first presenter.
Excellent. All right. So I want to thank you guys for having us here. I'm getting a little feedback. Are you getting that?
Everything sounds good to us.
Okay, good. I'm getting a little static when I speak. So as long as you don't hear it, I don't want, that would be annoying. So thanks for everybody for joining us, Dave and I. Just to let you know, when we teach, we want the tone of our webinars to be really informal, and we feel you get the most out of it if you are able to interact. So we invite you to light up the chat at any given time during this webinar. You don't have to wait till the end. We're happy to stop and take questions. We may have a break in the middle if we get time. We probably will. And just some things about webinars is they have their shortcomings as far as training and teaching. Certainly, Dave and I would much rather be in person training with you. But at this point in time, this is where we are. What we like about webinars is they're more convenient for you in many ways, and they often will add nice reminders to your day, put yourself in a mindset where you're a little bit more aware of your safety for the day, we hope, and we hope that you carry that forward indefinitely. The other message we want to add is that we think about safety, and we think about safety first and that sort of thing on a website. But we want to remind you that safety is not defined by an absence of an injury or a fatality. Sure luck will get you that absence, but what you have to make sure you have in hand is something where you can go forward and say, because of these measures I'm taking, I know that I have eliminated the hazards. And that's what OSHA expects you to do. PERP, Public Employers Retirement, Public Employers Risk Reduction Program. I'm getting there. I'm a couple years away now, and my brain is sleeping
pension's sounding good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's calling my name.
Yeah.
So PERP people, for those of you, I know there's a lot of you in the public sector here. So that is what is expected, is that you have measures in place where you're able to drive it home, make sure everything is being done every day. And that's what we want you to take away from this webinar. Because the thing that we keep seeing over and over is that the trenching statistics have not gotten a lot better. Trenching itself, it has not changed in 50 years. And in fact, the methods were put into place probably World War I, where trenching had to be done. So the methods and the safe things that we need to be doing to keep fatalities from happening, we are all too aware of those. We're just not doing it in the field. We definitely want to emphasize, at the outset of this and throughout the webinar and bringing it home at the end, that the culture is something that we really want to be looking at in the field, that you're doing it. Just yesterday I was heading to a job site, and along the side of the road, there's this little white hard hat sticking up, literally 70 inches from my tire, going down a highway. There's a white hard hat sticking up out of the ground. So that's the sort of thing where, I stopped by, I said, how did you classify the soil? Oh, it's type C. Type C, you have no protective measures in place, and you're next to a highway with an orange cone on the wrong side of the white line. So those are the kind of things we're going to talk about today. But people, as a rule, know when they are doing things wrong. And I'm not trying to beat you guys up. I just want to say, going forward, let's be more mindful of what we're doing in the field. We have the power. We have the technology. We even have, I'm going to give you a little tidbit in advance here, we even have a safety grant in place to help you acquire this equipment. So let's see if we can do better. That's what we're asking you today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the points I just wanted to make real quick was the simple fact, a lot of things, I've been doing quite a bit of the trench stand downs, as well as about a month or so back, we did a fall stand down. And a lot of things have happened and occurred during the pandemic to where some people may not have been in contact with each other like they had been before. Some people may not have done the things that they had used to. And there's been some things that just need to be reiterated. This is a good point, a good time. Stand down's coming up next week, so it's one of those kind of deals. It's a good time to reiterate it. You know, put the emphasis back on it. Make sure things are what they need to be and where they need to be. Just because you didn't have it on the truck that day or didn't have the right equipment with you when you were working that excavation doesn't mean that you still don't need to figure out how to protect it. Go back, get the right equipment. Don't put people in harm's way just because of that. And we were just discussing before this a little bit, was keep in mind there are a whole lot of agencies out there right now with state and government plates on them that are going to stop at open excavations. OSHA's got quite a few people, new hires out there, PERP, as well as, you know, some of the building inspectors are going to be stopping. If they see an open excavation nowadays, they're going to stop and see what's going on with it. They're going to see if you're right. You know, I've ran into a couple of folks with OSHA that if they see somebody that's right, it's a pat on the back. Good job, y'all. But if it's not, the citations are coming. So it's a good reiteration now that, hey, you're back out in public, people are out there. Reiterate that we need to put this forward first. So other than that,
Yeah,
that's it.
No, thank you, Dave. That's a great segue into this next slide, which is the announcement about the National Trench Safety Stand Down that NUCA initiates and OSHA partners with them, and that is next week. So I lost my screen, I think. There we go. Are my slides up?
Yeah, your slides are up. I turned my camera off and Ray turned his off. So
that's what happened. It shot to me. Okay, so so yeah, I'm going to take myself off screen now because it's that time, and we're going to focus on the presentation. It will help with my bandwidth. It might help with the feedback. I'm getting a little bit here too. So okay, taking myself off. See y'all later.
there we go.
So NUCA partners with OSHA, and it's something that, again, OSHA picks a few of these stand downs every year. What's the other one? If you guys know, it's fall protection is one of the other ones. There's a big emphasis on heat stress this year. So there's some things that OSHA is looking at in the world of construction, and just be aware of that. I've got a link here that you guys will get. It's in the copy of the presentation for the NUCA page. This icon, this blue icon in the top left-hand corner that you see, that I took that from a handout, and that is linked at the very third link below. It is a, I don't know what, 20-something page PDF, and it walks you through how to do a stand down. It's got talking points for your supervisors and site superintendents. It's an excellent handout that you can click on. And then, of course, we have the NUCA page, and then we have the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation page, which with a ton of resources. You're going to be getting some handouts as a follow-up. We are having a few technical problems this morning with the storms that rolled through Northwest Ohio last night, which is where I live. I'm west of Toledo. So I'm sending a list of handouts to Ray after the webinar, and you will be getting a copy of those. But we'll give you some trench safety training cards, training links and resources, and you can feel free to peruse those afterwards.
Mona, the other good thing about this too is since there's folks on here from across the state, you know, some of you may end up being in our region. I have pretty much east of Columbus, out to the river and all the way over to Marietta, down across 70 and 77 which way. And it's just worth mentioning that there are folks all over the state that are available for folks if they got questions, if they need help with anything. We have consultants assigned to each area in each region. So if somebody needs something, you know, reach out. We can put you in contact with who your local representative is. So
okay, cool. Well, great. Mr. Fitch, I have lost control of my screen. I can't forward the slide.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, would you prefer that we hand over presenter mode to David?
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. So Dave.
It seems it happened when I turned my camera off. And I tried turning it back on. You might have seen me on the screen, but that didn't change it.
Okay.
Well, you'll just have to yell at me when you're ready for the next one.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good, Dave. We see your screen.
Good?
All right. Looks good.
There we go.
Excellent. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. It's just been one of those mornings. So why are we focused on trench safety? And you're good, Dave. You brought up the next one already. Tragically, we will be discussing fatalities almost exclusively during this webinar. Death has proven to be the most likely outcome of a trench collapse. About 20 workers are killed every year in trench-related accidents. Trench fatalities first began to grab attention in the early 2000s. In 2003, there were 48 in the country. At that point, OSHA launched an investigation into the facts about trenching dangers. Some stats on this slide are from that study, and they're still very useful today in determining the hazards related to trenching. And sadly, many of these findings in the study revealed that the culture on the site was a catch me if you can attitude. And we've already addressed that a little bit. I'm not going to dig on you there. Just remember that most crews are in very dangerous situations when they're in those trenches, and anything you can do to help alleviate that or abate those hazards is something you really need to be focused on. I know you're always in a hurry, it's human nature, but just, that's something we need to keep going forward all the time. And also and I think Dave will probably do it too when we're teaching,
Oh, yeah.
we may often say he during this webinar, and we apologize for that. It's not a gender bias. It's the fact that there's only ever been one fatality suffered by a female in a trench, and that was in 2013, and she was struck with a bucket when she was down in the trench. So it wasn't a collapse. And today we're focused primarily on the most likely and severe result of being in a trench with an accident, and that is a cave-in.
Right. The other thing I just want to mention real quick is you'll hear us talk a lot about numbers, a lot about depths and things like that. You'll see the number, 5 foot come up all the time. A lot of these fatalities and injuries, that there is a possibility at 3 feet down, if you're on your hands and knees making a connection, to get collapsed and have an injury. There has been many injuries. There's been fatalities from trenches less than 5 feet. So it's not just that 5 foot that you'll hear us mention later. You have to also protect those that are even shorter. So
now, and that's an excellent point that Dave makes. And I mean, if you want to go to the next slide, you can.
Yep.
And just to follow up on Dave's point, which was an excellent one, and we don't talk about that formally in here, but I just wanted to add that it is likely that you can literally die a slow death if you have the trench collapse on your lower body, because it will compress the blood and it will result in rhabdomyosis, which is when the blood supply collapses in the veins and they begin to basically, it's the equivalent of gangrene to your venous system, but they get crushed to the point where they can't handle taking blood again. So at that point, your limb begins to die days or weeks after you have been had a lot of compression on your lower body extremities, and they will eventually end up amputating them. And the other thing that happens that will cause fatalities, even if you're not fully engulfed, is that your kidneys will get all the toxins when the body tries to start pushing blood through the venous system again, and the electrolytes, the kidneys will become toxic. So a lot of people succumb to kidney failure, and if a lot of people are on dialysis for an extended period if they are caught in a trench, and we just don't think about things like that. So it's not, dialysis is a nightmare. I have friends that are doing it, and it's not anything you want to step up for. So keep that in mind. This particular slide goes over, excuse me, a calendar year. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics matches this by calendar year. The data here reflected a very harsh spike in 2016. We were talking about the early 2000s, but bringing it forward, look at 16. And that's just, one is too many, and we had 36 in the country. And then you can see that 17, 19, and then I added 2020 on here, which is the most recent we have, by the way, right now. Those are things that's a trend we're not wanting to look at. And Dave, we can speculate somewhat about why those numbers are going back up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you jump in here, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons behind it. There's a lot of things we could look at and speculate. Everything from maybe, we know a whole lot of stuff was going on in 2020. Is it due to lack of training, lack of supervision? What was going on? There was a lot of things happening right then. And that's why I feel that this year is a really big deal, especially with a lot of the construction ramping up a little bit and a lot of folks getting back into the swing. It's really important this year to send home the fact that this is something that we can prevent. This is something we can take care of and deal with, and reiterating the training and the importance of trench safety. So
Yeah, good. Thank you for that information. It's helpful. And so if you go to this slide, you're going to say, hey, those numbers don't match up. Well, there's a reason those numbers don't match up. OSHA's fiscal year goes from October 1st to September 30th of the following year. But when we look by month by month, we were still seeing an increase. Now, you know, from the last slide, you saw that there was a 26 that died in 2020, and this slide only shows one, but again, it's the period that was captured. And then also there's another variable that can come in besides the periods during which this information was captured, and that's the long-term result. So OSHA record-keeping logs only cover so far into the future, and some of these people are, again, they're dying off 2, 3, 4 months later after the trench fatality, not right at that time. But again, the important thing to keep in mind is that we're having a lot of fatalities, and every single one of them is preventable. And in all the history and all of the cases I've studied, because I'm a bit of a geek and I dig into these things pretty, I get into the case studies sometimes in the OSHA incident reports, and then some of the litigation reports, and they're all preventable. I only know about one that wasn't, and that was the one we had in Cincinnati, and I believe it was 2019. And that's one that I will honestly say would have been hard to prevent. We had a supervisor that went down to check the tie-in before they backfilled the trench, and he didn't see his worker, and he stuck his head around the corner on the side of the trench box to look up and communicate with an employee that he couldn't see, and a big cloud of dirt fell down and hit him in the head and killed him. Yep. So that was maybe the only exception that was still technically preventable, but it was really one of those oddball accidents that we do have to admit in the safety profession they do exist. We want to say 100% is preventable, and it is 99.99%, but once in a while there's that somebody having a really bad day.
Well, we also know a lot of these injuries and fatalities, especially, they'll end up on the news. You'll see them on the news. It never fails. I mean, there wasn't that far back recently was one here in Columbus, and you know it's by some place I've drove by more than a couple of times. You see them on the news, you see what happens and all that kind of stuff. And what Mona just said was a lot of the reasons why I like instructing with her is because of the simple fact she digs into them, so do I. But she can spell that word she used in the last slide about the blood flow thing. So I can't just saying. So
thank you, Dave.
yeah, she could spell that. I know what it is now, but I can't spell it. So. But anyways, it does lead to the thing that, you know, the media will take and report on these quite often, and they end up a big deal. So
yeah, they do. And thank you. And you don't want to be that guy on the news. There's too many of them out there, and you don't want to fall in line with that. And well, I think, Dave, the most recent one we had in Ohio was the one down by you, right, where yep. So again, that one made the news.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's always bad. It's you know, you talk about the crisis communication kind of thing. You know, you don't want to be the person.
Are you there, Dave? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Mona, we hear you. I think we lost Dave's audio for a moment.
All right, he'll be back. You know, he was making some excellent points. As far as this particular slide, Dave talked about this earlier this morning. Again, a reason I like instructing with him as well, because we can kind of play off what each other are doing and go out of turn with these slides. But he talked about this, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because he did a good job. But the point being that with a national emphasis program, there's a national reporting that OSHA set up separately from the normal OSHA record-keeping logs. So we all know we have to submit our logs, and there's a database. Public employers, you submit it to PERP, Public Employers Risk Reduction Program, but the OSHA set aside their own individual database just for trenching and excavation fatalities and statistics that they found. And also they will develop and implement outreach programs, and it's my understanding that every area director is required to do a certain amount of outreach efforts on any national emphasis program. And then also, of course, as Dave mentioned, they will stop. They don't have to see a hazard from the road, which is different from fall protection, where they have to see that from the road before they have permission to stop. they can literally be on their way to a fatality inspection, and the fatality has already occurred. This is considered an imminent danger situation, somebody down in an unprotected trench, and they will prioritize that many times. They don't have to, but they're able to prioritize that over being on the way to a fatality inspection, which is, you know, that tells you how much emphasis is on this. So they want to increase trenching and excavation hazards abated by 10%. It goes back into that database with a distinct code associated with it. I'm done with that slide. I don't know that Dave can hear me to go to the next slide. Let me see if I can. I don't know how I lost control of
Okay.
my.
So Ramona,
Oh, now I got it. Can you see me? No.
let me make you a presenter, and let's go back to having you present, and we'll see if that works.
Yeah, I have it when I'm not in the presenter's mode. I have the toggle. Oh, and look,
Hey,
it worked.
wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for redoing that, because somehow it connected. All right. So that's a little bit about the national emphasis programs. You know, what can happen if you don't do things well? What are the potential consequences and costs of these unsafe practices? So as you can see, you know, there's OSHA fines or PERP fines for public employers. OSHA ratchets them up every year. It's based on, actually, believe it or not, the prevailing interest rate at the end of the previous year, and they look at that, and then they ratchet the fines and citations based on what that interest rate is, what the Fed is. But this page is something that you're going to want to think about. What is the potential cost? Criminal penalties are probably the biggest thing. So it's huge that in 2015, OSHA switched from having the prosecution procedures for fatalities in any given area referred to local judges. In 2015, they changed it to they're referring those over to the Department of Justice. So you're gonna have the DOJ on your case if you have a fatality that gets referred over to them by OSHA. I don't think PERP in Ohio has that access. But again, looking at these fines and those things, you know, we kind of inferred it up front, but your concern is not really OSHA. It's going to be the civil suits. It's going to be the lawyers. It's going to be the public relations debacle. There is a violation for specific safety requirements in Ohio that's specific to the Ohio Administrative Code. And that means if you are shown to have violated a Ohio's administrative code, then the claimant can claim an additional 50% of their claims costs upon the employer, and the employer has to write them a check. We do not get involved with that. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are going to affect your employer much worse. You know, I spoke with an employer in Cincinnati that had a trenching fatality in the early teens. I can't remember what year, and the litigation and legal fees and OSHA citations and fines, you know, and the public relations problem. She couldn't recruit new employees, so she closed the company. Those are the things that you have to think more about. And then if you have a bad reputation, who are you going to get applying? It is hard enough right now to get good employees, and then to take that and add to a bad public relations things. They Google you, you're in the headlines for not being the best performer. It's not going to bode well for your ability to keep your company moving forward, or if you're a private employer, to keep getting those jobs done with really good quality employees. So the references on this slide are just something you're going to want to familiarize yourself with. Subpart P is the excavation and trenching subpart for OSHA. It's good size. It was first regulated in 1969 under what's commonly referred to as the Construction Safety Act. It was practiced, discussed, reviewed, and revised in October of '89 with just one amendment in 1994, and the amendment in 1994 was requiring walkways to be added with to include guardrails if on anything over 6 feet. Ansi is something to be concerned about because they have a much more in-depth set of standards that everyone has to follow, and they are not something you can just go Google. They are a private company and you have to purchase their standards, yet OSHA can incorporate an Ansi standard by reference even though you can't see it just following it. You can follow OSHA standards, but you have to purchase the Ansi standards. So that's why you want to log on to webinars like this and go to websites that have the requirements listed, because that is the only way you're going to see Ansi. And Ansi is extremely detailed with a lot bigger requirements, and you're expected to know that as an employer. So Ansi requires an excavation safety and health plan. It's a written safety and health plan developed by the contractor for excavation work, and it describes the requirements and procedures to be implemented. So how many of us do a written safety and health plan before we get into that hole? You should be doing a checklist, and it should be on paper. Is that set in the standard by OSHA? Not really. But guess what's going to be the first thing an OSHA inspector asks for when they show up on a site, or a perp inspector? They're going to ask you, did you inspect your trench before entry today? And today, this morning, is a perfect example. We had torrential rain roll through here last night in Northwest Ohio and all of Northern Ohio. And I don't know about Columbus. Did you guys get it down there?
Yes.
Okay, so
Can you
rain
hear me now?
everywhere. Yeah. Welcome back, Dave.
Thank you. I heard a boom and then we lost everything. I don't know what, somebody's working on something somewhere, I think. Hopefully somebody wasn't digging a trench somewhere.
Oh, hopefully that was a patch. Yeah. So yeah, I was telling them that this morning is a perfect example of why you want to do a pre-entry inspection, and you want it on paper. So when I go on to sites, it's the first thing I ask for. Especially, you know, last Monday I was on a site. Well, we again had rain. We'd had a dry spell for 2 weeks, and then we had torrential rains on Saturday and Sunday. So we asked for the trench inspection paperwork when we show up on site. And we are consultants. We'll go over what we do, you know, here towards the end, because you get to hear an infomercial. I know you're excited, but you know, we still function as if we were doing a mock OSHA inspection when we come on site, just so you know what to prepare for. If we didn't, I think that later on, if you did get your chops busted, you would be saying, why didn't they tell me this stuff? So that's sort of what we do.
The other thing I just want to mention out of that is, especially I've seen more than quite a few places, you know, when you get on a site in the morning, you do a job hazard analysis, a job safety analysis, whatever you might want to call it. I've seen a few of the places they're calling it trench hazard analysis, and what they're doing is using it as the morning talking point before they get in and start work during the day. And everybody actually signs off on it and verifies, you know, all the hazards for the day, and it actually works really well. I've seen a couple of folks that I work with using that. It's a good, almost a toolbox talk, but it's also a good reminder of, hey, the items we need to be aware of. And, you know, let's say it wasn't raining in the morning and it took a little bit of rain. You need to do some corrections after lunch. It's worth having that conversation again, and it's a reiteration of, hey, there's some extra hazards that are out there now that you might need to take into account. So
yeah, good point. So role a competent person. This is to give you an idea of how much more detailed the Ansi standard is. So when you look at the OSHA standard, you know, OSHA is pretty straightforward. A competent person at a trenching and excavation site under subpart P should be capable of identifying hazards. You should have the authority to eliminate the hazards. You should have the required training and knowledge. You should know soil classification, use of protective systems, and the requirements for excavation. But I got the word authority highlighted just because that's where we see things not going well. I want you to know it is expected of OSHA. If you are a competent person, you're expected to shut down that site until all hazards can be removed or somehow developed with a countermeasure in place, so that you know we couldn't remove the hazard, we have a countermeasure, we've made sure that this employee is not exposed. But that's what OSHA says, so it's just basically required training, knowledge, and authority. What does Ansi say? Ansi comes and says it's one who's received and can demonstrate knowledge, skills, and abilities and duties. So a good example is the trench site I was on yesterday morning. The gentleman said it's a type soil C, and then there was no protective system. So did he fulfill the Ansi standard and the OSHA standard? Did he have the training and knowledge? In Ansi's view, did he demonstrate that he had it? I don't feel he did. So they require that you can demonstrate it on site, and they'll quiz you. OSHA can do that too. So that's required by the standard that in Ansi, they have to be capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings and working conditions that are unsanitary, hazardous, and dangerous. And again, there's that authority information there. So they want you to have authority and responsibility both. And what's the word responsibility mean versus what does authority mean? Authority means you can carry that order out. Responsibility means it will fall on your shoulders if you don't. So keep that in mind. Now, what we almost a good percent of the time find out when we get on site and I ask who's the competent person, everybody points at their buddy. So is that a functional way to run a trenching site? I question it because, as is the case yesterday, and it's almost every time I stop, everybody points at the other person. And when something goes wrong, they will still be pointing at the other person. So really the buck needs to stop with somebody, some person, some identified competent person. You should have the site superintendent, or, you know, it could be the backhoe operator, whoever it is, that person is going to have, per Ansi, the responsibility, not just the authority and the title.
The other thing I just want to mention out of that too is a lot of times competent person, well, it takes a little bit beyond that. You know, you mentioned somebody from OSHA stopping up or somebody stopping by. Nerves get a little bit frazzled after the fact. Sometimes, you know, depending on what all happened, it may be worth, you know, hey, guess what? It's time to blow up for the day. It's time to put stuff up. Let's revisit. Let's work on this and figure out. We'll try at it again tomorrow, kind of thing. And a lot of times it's, you know, everybody gets a little bit frazzled and everybody gets a little bit upset, and it's kind of, you know, that nerves get to running high. And I'm not saying everybody works at their top level when they're frazzled. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. And we do see that a lot. And it's that adrenaline rush and
Yes.
The post-incident emotions that pop up, especially if there's been a fatality.
Yes.
So one more thing I want to mention, sorry, Dave, before moving forward, is that when you start looking at this definition and it says identify hazards, show training and knowledge, show authority, that sounds a lot like a lot of other OSHA standards. And the one that most immediately comes to mind is the industrial standard for powered industrial truck operator training, because that's 1910-178. And that standard also mentions these entire concepts of competency, training, knowledge, skills. So when you start looking at the OSHA standards, you see a lot of consistency woven through them, and they are pushing more. You know, it takes 6 to 8 years to change a standard with OSHA, but they're pushing more and more with every new standard they adopt to start including the behavioral piece into it, because they're aware. Again, we have a standard that's been around since 1970. Trenching practices have been around since before World War I. We still have fatalities. So they're pushing for the behavioral and cultural piece in their standards as they continue to rewrite them. And you'll be seeing the training knowledge capabilities and skills capabilities more and more as times go on.
Very true.
All right. So, Raymond, do we have the ability to do a poll here?
Well, let's just try it out. They can answer in the questions box.
If not, we could just have everybody throw them in the chat and see what everybody's answers are.
Yeah, and again, we apologize to the audience. We had power problems up here today. Well, you saw that with Dave. And I'm having accessibility issues, and I emailed these polling questions to Mr. Raymond Preshart this morning, and then when we got on to start the webinar, we found out I'd sent them an hour or so earlier, and they didn't come through.
Yeah, well, just ask the question, put it in the chat if nothing else. Just what is a trench? What do we think a trench is?
Yep, the questions box is
deeper than it is
open.
wide. Huh?
I said the questions box is open, and already we have participants who are sending in responses, so that's good. Go ahead, Dave.
No, is it an excavation deeper than wide? Is it a hole in the ground or a depression in the ground beyond 3 feet?
Okay, we'll give everybody a few seconds here to type in their response, and we're off to a good start so far.
We are. This is why we love working with ODOT. When they ask us to do this, I said, these guys are so slick and you're so technologically advanced and quick on your feet. Yes, I'll work with you any day.
Well, thank you so much. So here's what we've got so far in the questions box. It looks like about 50% of the responses are for A and about 50% are for C.
Good, good. The actual correct answer is A, but if you have questions about that, Mona, if you flip to the next slide, We created these micro videos, and it's a YouTube video. There's links for them out there. Maybe we'll share them and show you guys later on at the end. But there's a short video that goes through what a competent person, the intro, and all those kinds of things that answer those types of questions. And it's a YouTube video that we created. They're 3 to 4 or 5 minutes long at the most, with a little bit of an assessment at the end if you want to take it. And it just helps with some of those kinds of questions. A lot of times having access to answering some things, and if you don't know how to use something or don't know how to do something, where do you go? YouTube. I caught myself over the weekend. I was messing around with one of my old Volkswagens and was fiddling around with the clutch, and I was trying to find torques and this, that, and the other. Well, guess what? I found somebody on YouTube telling me how. Well, like a lot of my construction guys say, you're spending a lot of time on YouTube anyways. I might as well get some work out of it. There's some beneficial things that you can go to and answer some of those questions. So.
Thanks, Dave. And I want to mention to the audience, in that handout section of the GoToWebinar panel, we have the PDF copy of today's presentation, and that'll give you a direct link to that YouTube video.
Yeah, there's 4 or 5 of them in there. We've been adding to them. There's HAZCOM, trenching. There's one on fall protection, one on forklifts, power industrial trucks, those kinds of things. We've been adding to them, but the trench safety ones are good for a lot of folks, just to be a quick reminder, a quick go through kind of deals. So.
Yeah, I was not as involved with Dave as the creation of those micro videos, and I'm just really proud to see what you guys did. Putting together a video, I mean, I've done it before and I worked on some of these a little bit, but they are so intense. There's all the artwork, there's all the graphics, there's the overlay of the narration. There's the technical proficiency required to produce that and put your stamp on it. I mean, you guys did a beautiful job. So thank you for putting those together.
Yep. We needed to find something that was able to get people back into contact and touch points with folks working with trenching. So.
Yeah, good job. Is the chat box blinking? I can't see let me see if I can see it. I don't think I can. Oh, yes, it's blinking for some reason, but I don't see a chat in there. Okay, I'll keep going. That was weird. Okay, it might have just been trying to get me to click on it, and I took the bait. Very, very good. So on this slide, what's a competent person? What do they do? Obviously, they are looking for hazards. We went over the person who has that authority, skills, knowledge, competencies have to be demonstrated. But when you must do inspections, you want to do one every day. Again, that's going to be something that's asked for if OSHA shows up on site or PERP. But you always want to do your inspection before the work begins, after rainstorms, high winds, or other occurrences that could increase hazards, and when it can be reasonably anticipated the worker will be exposed to hazard. And that reasonably anticipated or reasonably expected language that we see in the OSHA standards is a little bit vague. So that leaves the judgment to you. It puts the responsibility on your shoulders of what do you think is reasonable. It's in the emergency action plan. It's in so many other particular OSHA standards, and it's just some different kind of language in a technical standard that's not really technical, and it's open to interpretation. And so I think my word here would be, if you feel confident in your decision and you're willing to do it on site, would you still be willing to defend that to an OSHA compliance officer if they showed up on site or PERP, or would you be able to defend it in court? Can you stand behind whatever decision you made, because it is it's on your shoulders, whatever you want to do? You have to look at things like possible cave-ins. You have to look very thoroughly at the protective systems. The boxes got to be inspected. You have to look for hazardous atmosphere and conditions, and we'll get more into those later. But it's important that once you identify something, you ensure that corrective measure was taken. Whether you found it or one of your employees found it, those hazards have got to be addressed. Once you have found them, you cannot ignore them and just say, we're just going to go through this. We're just getting it down there for a second just to, fix this leak. You can't do it that way.
You hit that point where we're wrapping up the end of the day. We just jump down in there real quick. We're just at the end of the day. That those don't fly. Those are typically, a lot of times, believe it or not, that's where a lot of the accidents and injuries occur. The other thing about the reasonably anticipated is that's, when you talk about a competent person, that's where that experience level comes in too. because, you know, they have experience and are able to maybe foresee or know of or have had experience in certain similar situations and know how to react to it, know how to take care of those problems.
Yep. And before I go to the next slide, you know, put in the chat, if you will, Egress, how do you get in and out of that thing? I'm going to ask you guys to write in the chat, and I hope somebody can see it because I can't right now. So if you can write in the chat, what's OSHA require for you to get in and out of a protective system or any sort of a benched or sloped trench?
Okay.
And no one better answer the boom or the bucket of the excavator.
And we have the questions box open, and we'll give everybody some time to respond.
The bucket of the excavator is not an available option. Neither is the backhoe.
But it's fun.
Okay.
It's an amusement park ride.
We have multiple responses that say ladder.
There we go.
One that says ladder that extends beyond the cut.
Yep, exactly. Good.
Yeah, we like seeing it that way. And I just lost control of my toggle switch again.
Okay, well, let's pass presenter mode back to Dave.
All right, Dave, I'm on number 14 right now.
Yeah, I've got it up. Slideshow.
I really think this is the weather going on because we did not have, I think a lot of lines got damaged last night. We did not have these problems last year.
Yeah, it was quite a terrible storm last night.
All right, there we go.
Thank you. So yeah, to answer, you guys did a great job in the chat and went above and beyond, may I say, with adding some additional detail. You know, so we're just looking at what is safe access and egress. And you want that ladder within 25 feet.
Yep.
So anytime that you're down in there, you have to be able to run to the left or the right, which means the ladders can technically be 50 feet apart, but you always have to be within 25 feet of them.
Yep.
And then also, if you have structural ramps or runways, they have to be uniform in thickness. They have to be joined together in a manner that's just not going to fall apart and secured to each other, that sort of thing. So common sense prevails here, I hope. But there's a little chart there that you're going to have when you have your handout pulled up and printed out, and it will just, it gives you a better idea of what you want to use. And we often see ladders used at that 20-degree slope angle. That's
most common is ladders.
Yeah, I like the old wooden ones that, you know, you can hang on the wall and put flowers on as well. As a woman, I think they're beautiful. And they, you know, you can throw them down in a trench too and walk on them. They're just so versatile.
I just, if you're looking at this picture, I just have a feeling it might be staged with all the thumbs up. But I asked this question. I'm still trying to figure out, is the trench deep enough that he needed a fall harness? I'm just asking. But anyways, so Mona brought up the 25 feet, and of course the extends 3 foot beyond the cut. So that was what we were talking about. So I just wanted to ask this question. Let's just say this is a 50-foot trench. Ignore the soils piles that are way too close to both sides. Where would you put the ladder in this soils pile? In the middle? At the end? Where would you put it?
Okay, the questions box is open.
Would it go dead middle? Would it go at the end by the excavator? Or would it go the end by us at the bottom of the screen?
So several
if it's a 50-foot trench.
Several people have said in the middle.
Yep.
One person said use multiple ladders.
Okay. Now, here's the time when I can honestly tell you everyone is right. Because truthfully, if it's a 50-foot trench, you need just to make sure you have egress to it. You need to have access to it. So if you're working on one end and it's going to take you a long distance to get to the other end, you have to have it at least within 25 foot. But if going through this trench, you're going to have a hard time getting to the other end, sure, we should have another one. Or have two. Or, you know what, better yet, have three. The better thing is to make sure you have access to it. We always want to talk about the egress, but we also need to make sure that that individual is able to get to it and has access to it. So 2 ladders might be the answer to that one. So you know, mathematically, yes, if it's a 50-foot trench and you had people working on both sides, you could put it in the middle and that would meet the standard. But we're just talking about access here, not just egress. So everybody's right. All right.
Thank you. Well, so on this particular busy slide, I just wanted to mention a little bit about soil classifications. This is not a competent person course today. Please put in your notes. You are not going to be a certified competent person when you leave the webinar today. There's a 6-hour course, I think, that are provided by several people across the state. They do have some online. I personally don't feel this is the kind of application you can do online to go learn to be a competent person and get the feel for soil online. I would not ever offer a competent person type situation that way, but they're out there. And today does not count as one, but on our website under the resources tab, we have a list of over well in excess of 10 providers that are doing competent person courses across the state. So we're not getting that deep, into this today,
Yeah,
but
no pun intended.
It's hard to talk around those. But soil classification is just some things to keep in mind. OSHA has 4 categories, but where do you find information on how to classify those? It's in Appendix A of the excavation standard. But more important it is to know that they can and do change, that you can bounce back and forth between a B and a C depending on weather and humidity and water levels. You can bounce around, and that's why the competent person, we ask that you always do 2 samples of the soil test from different parts of the spoil pile where you're grabbing your soil.
And that's why a lot of the folks I work with, a lot of times they just always say it's classified as C, but you need to be aware of that there are other classifications. Even though you're classifying as a C, you know, this is a good refresher for a lot of people. It's just to notify you that there are 4 different kinds of soil. This is a really good visual analysis of what in the world.
Yeah, that's a good layered view. Absolutely.
Yes.
And the things the competent person will also look for, is it granular? Is it cohesive? Is it layered? You want to look at the surrounding area. Are there utility lines? Are there surcharges, or what's the word I'm looking for? Well, anyway, is there sources of vibration if there's weighted areas
vibration,
next to
right.
you?
Vehicles, equipment, tractors, those kinds of things. And something else is anytime it's been previously disturbed, you know, that automatically leads to a little less cohesiveness because it's been dug up before. So if you go out and you look and you find that there's been utilities placed in ground, or you're along the sides of a roadway or anything like that, there is very, very seldom someplace that you're going to be out doing an excavation that has not been previously disturbed. So
yeah, yep. So we really are not ever going to see type A in Ohio. In Southeast Ohio, I think you're running a little bit more towards your coal seams. Sometimes you'll run into that sort of thing, and shale. And in the Toledo area up here, we're looking at sand, and it can literally be so unstable that the minute you're digging it, especially if it's wet, it's like whipped cream. It just starts falling back in on itself the moment that you pull the bucket away. So it can definitely vary. We're basically going to have B and C in Ohio, and those are the ones to focus on. If you tell someone it's an A, you could get yourself in trouble. We don't have anything that's stable in Ohio. Yeah, unless you're in Nevada or the Rocky Mountains, which right now, as you may have heard just yesterday, they're not stable right now. They just shut down Yellowstone National Park. And then a lot of the areas around, if you look at the video, they've got mudslides and things going on, and the shale and rock coming right down the side. So I would question if A ever exists, especially when you take into accountability the fact that it can't have been previously disturbed.
Right, exactly. Here's a good example of manual test for a soil sample. Basically, feeling like a little kid. A lot of times, if we were in person, we'd pull out the Play-Doh, a pocket penetrometer or a shear vane, pull those out and play with a little bit of Play-Doh and do a little bit of testing with that. But you can also do, you should do thumb penetration, ribbon test, things like that to determine the cohesiveness of the actual soil samples. it's good to know. It's good to be able to understand those. A lot of times it's difficult to find what you're looking for. That's why a lot of times the folks that we deal with just go straight to a Class C because they're not finding what they need to have for cohesiveness.
Yep, great points. I mean, every method there has its advantages and disadvantages. The senior people who've been doing excavation and trenching and soil testing their entire life, most of them with who I speak do not like the penetrometers because the springs can go bad and you're going to be getting a misread. So they rely on what they know so well, which is what their hands are feeling with that soil.
Plus those shear vanes and pocket penetrometers, the thing is with them just like any other tool or piece of equipment or measuring device. It all depends on how they're cared for and taken care of. If that pocket penetrometer's been bouncing around in the toolbox underneath the seat of the truck and been kicked all over and not taken care of in the right manner, that does do a lot for wear and tear on devices and equipment. So. Right.
On this particular one, just the big, we're not reading the slides for you. You're very capable of doing that on your own. Just the big number is number 5, just 5 feet. You can never in a trench more than 5 feet. That is just black and white. And people will say, well, it's 47 inches. Well, sometimes under 5 feet. Dave mentioned this earlier, I believe. Sometimes even if it's under 5 feet, then you still have to assess and find out whether or not you need protective measures.
And that a lot of times, that's where the shoring devices and things like that come in. Yeah, I've talked with quite a few townships and cities and different kind of places. They're trying to dig between the sidewalk, the curb, and the driveway, and they're making water connections, and they're digging down, and they need to. Well, we're not at the 5 foot yet. Well, you know what? If you're on your hands and knees at the bottom of 3, you could be covered. And I've had more than a couple of folks with close calls that have made those points that we're throwing shoring in as soon as we get somebody in there at 3 foot, because if they're on their hands and knees making connections or working on something, that there is a hazard. There was a couple of the things we were talking about, the shoring devices, sloping and shielding. There's been some nice stuff coming out. Some of the shoring devices, they're coming out with a lot of different options. I actually ran into one the other day. One of my townships actually was reaching out. They're looking for the trench grant, and he asked me, said, "Hey, Dave," he said, "have you seen this yet?" And I said, "What is it?" And he sent me a video, and it's actually a blow-up shoring device. It's like a mini trench box that is actually, you use air with cross braces to form it. It actually fits in like a trunk of a car kind of thing. And it was rather surprising. The joke was, it looked like, initially when he said that, everybody I talked to was like, "So is that like an air bouncy house in the ground?" And we're like, "Well, no, not like that, but the walls get very, it's tested, it's all that kind of good stuff." But it's another option that they were looking at, and it's made for smaller excavations. It's made for those smaller kind of options, much like the shoring. You can get it in a different size to actually fit your needs. So.
Yeah, great points. When looking at protective systems as well, just remember that there's certain criteria that has to be met. You're going to be looking at the depth of the trench. You might have a professional registered engineer involved. If it's over 20 feet, you should. And what is always going to be used as the gold standard of whether or not you met requirements for protective systems is the tabulated data. That is going to be I think it's an appendices to subpart P, but it's in subpart P. So the tabulated data is language that you should be hearing on a trenching site. If people don't know what that is, then we kind of know they probably didn't get good competent person training.
Right. All right, got another polling question. Who should conduct a trench inspection on your work site? We have answer A, which is anyone entering the trench. Answer B, which is the excavator or the equipment operator. Or answer C, the competent person.
All right, and the questions box is open. We see responses arriving already. And we'll give a few more seconds here. Okay, so looking at the questions box. Oh, go ahead.
To my knowledge, that's our last one today. We're
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
spring
We're
that on you
throwing at
anymore.
All right, so in the questions box, it looks like about, 3/4 of the responses are for option C. There are
Yeah,
some responses for option A. One says all but C absolutely.
there we go. I like that one. The reason I mentioned this is this is another one of my questions that I asked, because obviously the competent person needs to be the one who does the trench inspection. But being as the guy that used to have to get in the trench, I want to make sure, sorry, I almost went back to previous career. I want to make sure that I'm the one being protected and everything's good. I might be with that competent person looking that over before I get into the trench. Also, the guy running the excavator. It'd be a really good opportunity and time for the competent person to have a conversation with all three of those folks to see if there's any concerns. And that's where that question, technically, yes, the C has to be it, but I would like for all three of those people to be involved in that decision and that discussion, especially if you're going to be the one in the trench, you're the one working around the trench, and you're the guy responsible for the trench. So I think all three of those is a good answer. So, and another self-serving advertisement, we've also got a video on trench safety and trench inspections on YouTube. So. All right, we're just going to hit a little bit about sloping and benching. I've not seen a whole lot of it recently because a lot of people don't really want to open up this much ground other than something brand new or something very large to where they're tearing a lot away. But this is a good question. Is this slope, is it safe for any soil classification? The answer, probably not.
And when we look at this chart, one thing I always like to point out is if you always treat it as type C and you slope it at 34 degrees, you will always be safe with anything. And Dave and I had this discussion yesterday when we were preparing for this class, looking at that particular sloping. Is that 34 degrees or not? I think it's not, but
Right.
You would have to be on site to see. So
Right.
To us, it doesn't look like it's sloped properly, but to the 34 degrees, but who knows, and maybe it's classified differently unless you're on site. And that's why we don't really pass judgment too harshly. Unless you're on site, you're the person there, like Dave said, you're the person getting down in the trench, you're the person who's behind the excavator controls. We don't really judge too heavily, but OSHA will. They're going to come on site with measurement tools, and what they use is a string for the 5-foot depth. By the way, they have a string with a weight on the end of it, and they drop it down, and if it hits bottom, and you guys might do the same thing, if it hits bottom, then you're 5 feet.
A couple of my cities that I work with pretty regularly do a lot and are used to seeing me. They've gotten in a habit when they see my state car coming by that one of the guy that typically he's their competent person. He's also job site foreman. Usually he's walking directly back to the truck because he's got a stick and it's got multiple measurements on it. And one of them's the 5 foot, but he's also got a couple others that he's also got, spoils pile. He's got all these markings on this little stick just to show me, hey, we're where we need to be. We're doing what we're supposed to do, kind of deal. So those kind of things, sometimes it is useful to have in the truck or in the back of the trailer as well.
Yeah, great point. This one, there's so much going on here. This is an OSHA photograph. We do use it in a lot of our presentations because it's busy and there are so many particular hazards. But I guess what my question would be, if you will put it in the chat, is what do you feel is the greatest threat here? If you put that in the chat, and we get asked that a lot when we're on site, is what's the worst? What's the worst thing here? So to prioritize, and it's something that's good to do, to be able to do when you're on site, it's a good skill to have. What's the worst thing you see here in the chat, please?
Okay,
yeah.
And the questions box is open.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've seen this a few times, and I can just say, the guy down at the bottom making sure the fall of the pipe is correct, adjusting it with a little bit of gravel on top of and underneath. I'm just saying, I'm familiar, so there's a lot of hazards going on here.
What are they saying, Ray?
Well, the
Like,
initial responses are several are saying falling stone or falling load.
yep,
Several responses are saying cave in. One
yep,
response says equipment over the hole.
yep. Yeah, there's a whole lot. This is what I was talking about. You know, we really don't have a good measurement on the depth, but being on your hands and knees working with the pipe at the bottom of the trench, that obviously puts you at more of a, you know, puts you at a deeper rate to where you're having a more heavy risk. So good answers.
Yeah, excellent.
I always like this one because it always talks about the 1 cubic foot of soil weighs between 90 and 130 pounds. The other one, because me being a Volkswagen kind of guy, dune buggies and whatnot, I always hear the comparison made when a trench collapses. It's like parking a Volkswagen on your chest.
Yeah. And if it goes at 40 miles an hour, it's like getting hit with that Volkswagen.
Yes, yes. This is another quick one. You know, we got a trench, got an excavation open. You know, how do you get across that? Do you walk all the way across, or do what I've seen many a times is they get close to the edge and then jump? I've seen that way too often and way too many times. Yeah, ideally you want to have some sort of a platform like the one on the right with some guard railing. You know, this is a really good example on the right of, you know, we're protecting a trench or protecting an excavation, an opening, and actually have, you know, what you would use to cross that with.
Yep. Yep. Good points. That's the part of the standard that was one of the few standards that applications to the standard that was changed. That's the one I mentioned earlier that was changed in 1994 as an amendment, and it's one of the few changes they've been able to make to that standard. And
Yeah,
those are nice little pop-ups like you're pointing to right now that you can,
with
you
the
know,
guardrails,
disassemble
yes.
those and yeah, just assemble them real quick on site and be ready to rock and roll.
Also, the other big one is digging next to structures. You know, a lot of times, you know, that the first thing that always comes to mind is those that dig along the edges of basements and things like that, but also just digging along the side of any structure. You know, that ground is supporting that structure. Once you get to a certain depth, you know, you're not supporting that as much anymore.
Yeah, and I don't know that we
So
have
the
any.
system above.
Yeah,
go ahead.
That's okay. Thanks. I don't know that we have any basement diggers in the audience, but
its example is just the only thing I could think of off the top of my head.
oh no, what I was going to say is that's where the single biggest case in Ohio originated from, was that basement digging operation.
Yes.
And tie-in in Cincinnati, Hamilton area that now is the center of a $20 million lawsuit. And that's a dicey prospect to try to dig next to that pure, you know, a newly poured wall, and it's just, there's no easy answer. Again, it's not something you want to jump in and just try your luck and see if it works out. That's like Russian roulette at that point.
Exactly. And here's some of our friends at Ohio 811. We've become really good friends, myself with George Gillespie and a couple of those guys that run around the state, take care of that, help us with that, making sure that you're doing your one call and calling ahead and calling before you dig, and that's a very important thing. One of the best pieces of advice I had ever gotten from George, and he's been around for a long time, seen a lot and had a lot of experience, and he's always told me, even if we've been called, even if they've came out and there are markings and the flags are where they need to be and all that, take the time to get out of the truck, no tools in hand, nothing planning on anything other than just looking, and walk where you're going to be actually making the excavation. Look for things like poles, look for conduits going into the ground, look for light poles that are out in the middle of someplace, making sure to take in all that's there on the site, you know, seeing if there's anything else that maybe, you know, got missed, verifying that the drops and the ups and the downs for the electric and those kind of things are all took care of. And then the other big one is he says, you know, you hit the natural gas lines and some of those other ones, you're going to cause injury and possibly pass. But he said, if you hit a fiber optic line, you'll wish you did, because the amount of money that it costs for hitting a fiber optic line is more than it grows insurmountably. So.
Yeah, good point. And Dave, you might remember the story, and some of you may have heard the story with the fatality that was in Marysville, I don't remember what year, you know, the mid-teens.
Yeah.
They were digging not far from a hospital, the Marysville Hospital, and when they went to the body recovery, the rescue team was delayed because they had nicked the hospital line, and they knew that if they tried to unearth some of that, they were going to shut down the hospital. So it's a good example of knowing what you're digging around.
Yep. And it's what's the George always calls it, dig in a prudent and safe manner. So, all right. Here's another one of our videos. It's about trench box placements. We'll talk a little bit about this. This is our obviously bad picture that we showed earlier, that with a lot of the issues such as spoil pile, you need to make sure your spoils piles are set back at a minimum of 2 feet. I say set them back even further just to make sure that the crown of the spoils pile is going away from the trench, not towards the trench. So as more gets added, it doesn't accidentally slough back towards and encroach on that 2 feet minimum.
I think we lost Dave. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear everybody.
Oh, okay. Yeah, making sure that spoils pile doesn't get into that 2 foot minimum area.
Might have been me.
Oh, all right. And the other big one is making sure stuff isn't laying near the trench that could fall in. You know, tools, equipment, all those things, you know, present a hazard as well. So making sure there aren't other items laying up there within that 2 feet range that actually could fall into. You know, I'm thinking of stuff like plywood, roadway plates, you know, cross braces, tools, equipment, all those, you know, present a danger and a hazard. And I love this picture just because it's an old 60s Ford. And I've looked for a new one, but I've actually had a couple I didn't want to share necessarily because I don't know necessarily where they came from. But I have seen pictures of vehicles in trenches, in trench boxes. And your mobile equipment and your vehicles and those kinds of things, they need to be directed away from your trenches and your excavations. The barriers and barricades on the right are a good example of that. See, and then where's Raymond at? Is he on here? There, my good friend over there. He's the man on this. You have him available. Use him. Ask him questions. Have him explain things to you. This is a very, very important part of the digging. A lot of times it's happening on the sides of roadways and places that are hazardous. You know, this is a good time to promote some of his stuff.
Right, thank you. Yes, we talk about the use of barricades and drums, or even put a wall of cones in front of your trench. Anything to keep people from driving right into your trench, you know.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it happens in between the egg muffin and the cell phone and the radio. It seems like happens quite a bit. So keeping people out of those trenches and out of those work zones is a pretty big ordeal. So that's the added hazard of trenching and excavation. So.
Yeah, and I just, you know, when we're in the field, we so seldom see that done correctly. Unless it's a very large contractor, it's almost 95% of the time, if it's a smaller employer, they are not doing that correctly, you know, to their own detriment. I mean, think about distracted driving these days. I had a motorcycle and sold it about 2 years ago, and I miss riding my motorcycle, but I do not miss feeling like I was going to turn into, you know, a roadkill. And I just was losing friends to it as well. It just wasn't worth it. This is not the laid back Sunday driver community that we had 30 years ago, you know, with all the distractions and texting. And people being so rushed running from one place to another. They're really not, their eyes are just not on the road like they once were. Exactly.
Here's another good example of what I was talking about. This is some of the hazards that are that stuff laying along the trench. Okay, yeah, we have a ladder. You know, probably need some protections. We probably have some rebar caps that are necessary, or something going on there. There's a lot of hazards, a whole lot going on here. And this is the good point of a discussion of, all right, well, somebody is probably needing to address some of these hazards. If you're the one that's going down in that hole today, you need to make sure that the questions get asked before you decide to climb down that ladder. Then we always bring in, well, the water's in there. How do we get the water out? Well, we typically know that takes a pump, right? Well, if that pump is gas operated, what are you creating in that hole? Therein lies another issue. So
yeah, you should have a competent person testing any excavation deeper than 4. That
yes.
number is a little bit different, which can come as a surprise, but there's so many things that can go wrong, and there's different levels of exposure. So some vapors are heavier than others. Some will sink, some will go up out of your trench. Wind, sometimes if you have a vehicle parked near
Yes.
the edge, then the wind can blow the exhaust into the hole. There's a lot of variables there. It just goes to show that construction is such a complex undertaking, and that it changes by the minute. I think it's one reason Dave and I like it. It's if you go into do a factory inspection, it's probably going to be the same 5 minutes after you leave for the most part as it was when you got there, but construction changes by the second.
Yep. The vehicles and the excavators and track hose and things like that you need to pay attention where the exhaust is going from them, and making sure that the exhausts are sealed up and all that kind of stuff as well, because just because the tailpipe's pointing away from the trench doesn't mean that you don't have something busted halfway through. I only can say that because I seen one of those. I was reading about one. So same thing we discussed. There's your water accumulation. Make sure that that's addressed before you do anything. Water will always make everything less stable. It's going to make it less cohesive, more likely to slough off, more likely to have issues. And obviously you got to get the water out of it in some which way or another, which presents the next hazard. Hard hats. Yep, you're below ground, you're below grade. Anything that can come down, you've got a hazard you need to protect. So hard hats need to be worn in excavation because of the overhead hazards. Just wanted to reiterate that one. Now, this one's just for a reference sake. There's some employer responsibilities. Make sure you're making the call, make sure you're protecting against cave-ins, take corrective action. Respond to hazards pointed out by anybody working on or around the trench. Make sure the ladder's within 25 feet of your work area. Anytime you're deep, 4 foot. Keep excavated dirt back 2 foot. Test air, test soil, all that kind of good stuff. But here's the big one. You also have a responsibility. You need to work defensively, follow your company's excavation safety rules, correct any hazards you are able to correct. And this is the big one: report any hazards that you see to your supervisor. You need to let them know that there's something there. Don't just walk on and say, well, you know what, it's not affecting me. It needs to be reported, it needs to be discussed. That way it can be rectified.
Yeah, and the minute that you do pipe up and notice a hazard and report it to your supervisor, a lot of people are unaware that once you have recognized the hazard and reported it, and the employer is now responsible to assume responsibility to correct it. And if nothing else can be cited against that employer, OSHA can use what's called the general duty clause, which requires every employer to provide a workplace that is free of recognized hazards. And one form of recognition is an employee complaint.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind. Once that's been brought to the surface, once that pink elephant is flushed out of the living room, it's got to be addressed.
Yes, yes. And I know I've hit it a bunch of times. Never enter a trench more than 5 feet unless there's a protective system in place. Trenches less than 5 feet also require competent persons. Okay, so if you know that you're going to be on hands and knees, maybe a little less than 5 feet, you might need something. But here's another big point: if you're working inside of a trench box or inside of shoring, stepping out of the end of the trench box or inside of the shoring you should not be doing it. You need to maintain yourself inside of and the work inside of that box. If it needs to be moved to where your work needs to continue, then move the box or the shoring. Don't work outside of the trench box. This is one of the case studies Mona was discussing. This is this is another one of those fatality kind of things. It's sometimes it's a little hard to read and hard to grasp and all that because of of what's happened with it, but
Yeah, that was a bad one. The crew leader grounded the bucket, turned the machine off, and walked to a company trailer to check out blueprints. When he came out of the trailer, that was when he was told by one of the workers the trench had collapsed and there were 2 people in there. And if you don't mind, Dave, I'm going to take a moment and talk a little bit about recovery.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have a slide in here on it, but in the state of Ohio, you know, what would your gut reaction be if you had a trench collapse? It's probably going to be to call 911 and maybe try to dig somebody out while you're waiting on 911 and the rescue squads to arrive. But as a former EMT, I've spoken with some of the rescue professionals in Ohio who are out there still doing it. And right now we have 8 fully, and this is key, certified and equipped crews in Ohio to do trench entry and rescue, and that is certified and equipped. So some people have gone through the training to get their CEUs, but they don't have the equipment. Some people were granted the equipment through a government grant and they don't have their training. So if you are in a remote area in particular and you call for rescue, chances are it will be a body recovery because it takes 4 to 6 minutes for the brain to start dying off at a cellular level and shutting down, and you're going to be waiting an hour or 2 for emergency response. So we can't emphasize enough the need to do that pre-entry checklist, pre-entry assessment, a safety and health plan, because you don't want to be at the other end of it trying to figure out how to get the body out. And when we had one trench collapse in Ohio, and it was a father and son, and the father was just emotionally devastated down there trying to figure out how to use that backhoe to try to find his son.
And not hurt him further.
Yeah, and not disassemble it when he was, you know, the body when, and again, that was a recovery as well.
Yeah.
And then we're putting the rescuers, we're putting the rescuers.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, when you see location of victims, that's always a bad thing.
Yes, I've got a Pulse Point app on my cell phone, and I do check it when the notices come across, and I just hope to God I haven't so far. We've been very lucky, and I'm going to emphasize lucky in the state of Ohio that we have not had a fatality in 2021 or 2022 so far. So let's keep going. I think that awareness has come up. I think we are doing things better. I hope we affect the way that you approach everything on site, and I hope that anyone that was maybe thinking about taking shortcuts or doing them will change their tune a little bit going forward away from this webinar.
Yeah, yeah. I've got a couple of hazard recognition pictures I just wanted to go through real quick, and these are usually our good discussion point of, you know, hey, you know, we see a whole lot going on here. We see a whole lot that's not right, but this one I just want to make one quick point on, and we'll move on to the next, is how many people saw this and never said anything? How many people have been down there working and just, it's just what we do? You know, speak up. If you see something, say something. You know, you don't want to be the one explaining it to their wife and kids what had happened. And this one I left in here just because of Ray, because I wanted to point out, I'm thinking he's a little too close to the road.
I'm thinking he's going to go out in style if he goes. That's a Beamer.
Yeah. This, I don't see a cone, not one. But hey, there is some reflectiveness on there, so I don't know. At 60 mile an hour, I'm not thinking that they're going to notice him. So
yeah, that might be worthy of a shoulder work, a head sign, and setting up typical application number 4 in the work zone manual.
Yep. That's these are ones we've gotten from folks and places. I think these were actually from OSHA. Here's another one, undercutting. Step back. I'm thinking there's a little bit of an issue in this area, and it looks like there's some cracking and some such going on here. It won't be long before that piece there is coming down.
You know, and I like your point real quick, you know, feel free to move forward here, but the cracks and fissures or something when you're doing that trench inspection that can change from day to day. And you know, if you're we had a video, and you can look it up on YouTube, where there were 6 people that got killed in a trench because the people were standing too close to the edge and there were fissures and the edge gave out from under them. Yeah, just watching what was going on.
Yep. I'm guessing this picture, I'm guessing that's not plywood. It's probably some roadway plate, but I'm just saying that excavator probably exceeds the GVW of that piece there. So, but I'm sure there's many folks that might have seen something similar to this. This one just makes me shake my head and be really, really nervous when your sidewall is obviously no protection, but we've got stuff even leaning outwards, as well as a spoils pile on top of that leaning outwards. Not to mention about the other 15 things we see wrong with this one. But this is another one. If you see it, you should be saying something. And this one, what do you think, Ray? You think that's appropriate? I'm just asking.
Yeah, it looks pretty dangerous. You're putting a lot of trust in the driver of that truck for the wheels not to come down into that hole.
Yeah. This is one where the trailer ends up in the not even trench shoring. So.
And all they had to do was scoot the barricades out, another, 8 to 10 feet at least.
Yep. And, all the vibration of that roadway, not to mention the weight of a semi compared to a car, that's going to do severe damage to this area, especially along sides of asphalt and roadways and things like that. You don't know what's underneath that asphalt necessarily and how much compaction and all that necessarily happens. So,
we get so trusting of things like that.
Right.
We have this blind trust. If you're above it, you just go with it.
Well, here's the thing: when you got somebody and you just say this is what we've done, and as somebody that's worked a very long portion of their career in public employment kind of thing, I've done quite a bit of side work with other people and stuff too. But it's becomes a thing. Just because we've done it that way doesn't mean it's right. That's why these kinds of trainings are good. I started doing some of the safety training because my former boss and mentor said, hey, you're going to be in charge of this maintenance department, these construction crews at some point. It would be worthy of you stepping in and learning some of this stuff. And I actually started taking classes through BWC, and a few years later, I finished a degree in safety and health and realized how much of a difference it actually made. Just even if it's just a little bit of awareness, a little bit of recognizing things. We went from getting guys hurt every 2-3 months to we weren't going to the hospital hardly at all anymore. And it does matter. These kinds of things do make a difference. So here, my last selfless plug, here's another one, the trench safety, know the numbers. It talks about a lot of the numbers we talked about today, the 2 foot, the 4 foot, the 5 foot, the 25 foot. It goes through a whole plethora of numbers that are good to know and would be something that your competent person probably should be very knowledgeable on.
And that's my favorite video. I think we were going to do that today as this kind of a wrap up, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's fine. But this is our trench safety campaign. Obviously the goal is to prevent injuries and fatalities. We've been doing some seminars. We've been doing some trench safety events. Mona and I is working on some other stuff for in the future. There's a lot of places that we work with to do individual trench safety events. If there's a large group of folks that want to get together and put together an event, we've worked with some private and public both to try and put some events together to help with that. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, we do safety consulting. There is a trench safety grant out there now that we've been pushing quite a bit. It's what was it, 12,000, a 4-to-1 match?
Yes.
Yeah, it's out there. It's available. I've got quite a few places taking advantage of it. My most recent one was the guys looking for the air box, and they actually were buying some aluminum lightweight boxes just to get that. I found some guys getting shoring, speed shore, some of that kind of stuff. So, fully take advantage of that safety grant. If you got questions, get a hold of us. We'll put you in contact with, or I'm pretty sure we put some links in the presentation after all this, just so you can get to it after we're done talking. So, and there's a trench safety website. It's actually BWC website, trenchsafetyohio.com. You can go to. Has a lot of information on it.
That's a ton. I mean, there's all kinds. One of the things that you might find interesting, I did, about the website is it's got clickable links to all the standards. So there's a page in there in the resources tab that you can go to, and if you're not sure about the BSSR or the OSHA standard or where are the tabulated data, you can click on the standard. It will take you to the law, the coded law page, the Ohio Administrative Code or the OSHA code. It will take you there. So those are just helpful, quick links. So we looked it up for you. You don't have to look it up.
Yeah. And we had some extra slides at the end. It was just for informational purposes, shows websites and things like that, gives examples of where things are at. we took some screenshots and added those. It's just a quick way of taking you to some of the stuff that's available on there. So when you're back there searching for it and clicking on it, you'll know what it looks like. So
yeah, I think one popular item on the grant has been the speed shore. So there's
yes,
options on that protective equipment. You don't just have to stick with a box, because
yes,
boxes
have
have
to.
their rigid limitations.
Yep. And the speed shore is a lot of times when I've had discussions with a couple of the places that have had issues, the speed shore would have corrected those issues for them had they been there with them. And that was part of the discussion. Hey, 2-3 years ago, we were inspecting the trucks every, quarter and ensuring all that was there. Well, such and such broke. We took it out of the truck. We never replaced it. It was this, that, and the other was right. It wasn't in the truck. Well, that needs to be corrected. And, you can't blame the pandemic for not having your stuff. So we just got back to some of the regular, we're inspecting stuff. We're making sure stuff's where it needs to be. The speed shore getting added into trucks and trailers for most job sites has been a big ordeal lately. So.
Yeah.
Other than that, you want to take any questions if there were any?
Yeah, we're open to that. We want to leave a few minutes at the end. While those are rolling in, I just, Dave and I want to thank Ray and Michael and Victoria Beal, who's been behind the scenes answering questions for us before we headed into this webinar and sending us the panelist links. I mean, you guys, you have a well-oiled machine down there at ODOT, and we so appreciate you inviting us and giving us this opportunity. And I know that we have a shared goal to spread awareness and hope to influence the way things happen out in the field and the decisions that are made. And just, thank you for this platform.
Absolutely.
Well, you're welcome, Ramona and David. And I want to point out that you guys mentioned something earlier in the webinar about a 6-hour training for someone to become a competent person. We represent or provide training for all local governments in Ohio. We've got a lot of people out there that do trenching inside the public right of way. So if you have any kind of specialized training for someone to become a competent person while working inside the public right of way with trenching, we'd be all, very happy to help you market that training, and we could, do the same thing with that. And you could even do an in-person training if that's your preference for that sort of thing. We could think about providing you the location and all that as well. So that's something you guys can think about and get back with me on.
Excellent. Sure. Yeah, and we are exploring that right now. Actually, I'll just let the cat out of the bag a little. We have a team exploring a possibility towards that. So if we are able to pull that through, you'll be getting an announcement, and we'll forward that to you as well. And we so appreciate the offer. Thank you.
Yep. And the hope is, much like, obviously the webinar version like this is really nice to be able to reach out all over the state kind of thing, but we're looking at multiple places in the state, so we're not, people in southeastern Ohio or northwestern Ohio aren't left out of it. It's not going to, the idea that it's got to be everything in Columbus or everything in Cleveland, not leaving them out, but multiple places in the state was what we were looking for. So we don't leave anyone out, making sure that folks can get there if they want to attend.
Well, I went to a safety conference in Dayton back in February, and it was all about safety, all sorts of safety training. But I noticed they had about 3 or 4 trenching safety and excavation safety classes that were very popular, probably the most popular. Even their guest speaker spoke about trenching and excavation safety. So, I recognize the need to provide trenching and excavation safety. That's why I got in touch with Ramona again, make sure, that we have another class. We like to do this, on a regular basis, have, 1 or 2 of these, anything that has to do with trenching and safety, that we could, work with you guys and provide this training to our customers.
All right. Well, in the questions box, we have several items. Troy says, anyone has stop work authority if they see something dangerous?
Yes.
So thank you, Troy, for sharing that.
Appreciate that. Exactly.
We have a question from Tanner who says, is there a requirement for cones or barriers for delineation from the roadway when excavating in drainage ditches adjacent to the roadway when working off of the roadway? If so, can that information be shared?
I guess I could field that one. Anytime you're working on the shoulder of a roadway, then yeah, the temporary traffic control manual has lots of information about what you're supposed to provide. There's typical application number 4 and number 6 deal with that. And if your staging area includes the lane, then that includes a lane closure. And so yeah, we have a plus. I teach the work zone class on a regular basis, and I have lots of training information on the Ohio LTAP website on that as well. So you can get a hold of me personally if you have more questions.
Yeah, and likewise, Raymond, if you ever need photos or examples of that sort of thing, if you are putting something together and you want to incorporate a little trenching into it, just let us know.
All right, thanks. And let's do one more question. Question from Jacob. If you already got a safety grant at the beginning of the program, can you get another grant?
Yeah, that's a popular question.
Very popular.
Give me 1 second. I think I have the answer for that.
Yeah, I don't believe you're able to yet.
No.
Yeah, you're not able to yet, but there's always possibility of something getting restarted or that kind of thing. I don't necessarily know if there was an end date or an amount of time that had to expire before you could reapply, but
with most of those grants, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just trying to click, but I was realizing my presentation screen's still up.
Yeah, mine is too. I just think that it's normally 1 per policy unless we do some sort of renewal, and that's pretty much not ever going to change. I don't think on this particular grant. It's in high demand. We're burning through the budget pretty quick on it. Sometimes we have backlogs where the applications are held till the next renewal of our budget, that sort of thing. So probably not, but you can get 1 per policy number. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And my thought is it's per policy. So keep that in mind. If you have a company that has 3 crews across the state and you have a different policy number for Southeast, Northwest, and Southeast, or sorry, anyway, you can get 1 per policy number. So keep that in mind. That's helpful.
As long as they're working doing excavation, that's the requirement.
All right. Well, we have reached the end of the webinar, so I really want to thank Ramona and David and Raymond for presenting today. We really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for your participation.